Welcome and good evening to the February 7th, 2018 Shakopee City Council meeting. Item number 1, if we could please call the roll.
Yes, Mayor. Councilmember Luce.
Here.
Councilmember Lehman.
Here.
Mayor Mars.
Here.
Councilmember Whiting.
Here.
Councilmember Mokel. Here.
Thank you. Let's all stand for the Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Thank you very much. Moving ahead to 3B, 3A has been removed due to timing. Mr. Reynolds?
Thank you, Mr. Mayor, and Mr. Noble is going to allow our honored guests into the room, and we'll allow them some opportunity to get seated really quickly. You know, sometimes you just get lucky. As someone who used to be in Washington, D.C. and used to deal with traffic, I can tell you that commute time makes a difference. It impacts your quality of life and other things. And when we were searching for a finance director, a little known issue is that we actually, when it came to interviews, for whatever reason, only had one person we interviewed. And it wasn't because we only wanted one person, it was all that we had that made it through the process. And because of that, we found somebody who frankly epitomized everything that a public servant is, and who brings forth an incredible degree of knowledge that has literally transformed our budgetary experience here in Shakopee and brought a level of clarity to what we do that we didn't have before. So, like I said, sometimes you just get lucky. When we were coming in and Darren came in to interview, I told our senior staff, I go, don't act like he's the only guy. I was so scared to death that, because in looking at his background and everything else and then making some phone calls, going into the process, he certainly was my #1 candidate. And since then, it's been easy to see why he has been able to fit in so well into this staff and into this city. Because of some of the, let me just kind of go through, if I can, some of the things that he's brought to the table recently. This is the second year that we have had a budget with little to no impact on our taxpayers' absent valuation. We have been more fiscally prudent. We have been more transparent. We now have a budget that accurately reflects how we spend our tax dollars. His work has helped helped set the stage for fiscal stability in our immediate future. In talking with him in the last couple of weeks, his new goal is to look at this city having a AAA tax rating at some point in the near future, which is not something that most cities can brag about. It's with great optimism for where we're headed financially as an organization, and with just the greatest amount of pride in having a hire that turned out better than any of our expectations, that I am delighted to present to Mr. Darren Nelson, Shakopee's Finance Director, the 2017 Administrator's Leadership Award. And Darren, I'm so glad that you worked in Fridley prior to this and lived across the river and wanted to be spending more time with your family, because it's been to our benefit across the board. Your family is here, obviously, to help share this. Thank you so much, sir. Really appreciate it.
Thank you, guys.
Speech, yeah. Right. Thank you very much. That's completely caught me by surprise. Thank you very much. I really have to thank my staff, the rest of the leadership throughout the city and council as well. I mean, you guys have all been very supportive, and I think we're going in a great direction. and excited for what we've done and where we're going in the future, so. I'm still not sure how you got this one by me, because I had completely blindsided and completely feel that there's lots of great candidates for this, and feel very privileged, so thank you very much.
Darren Nelson, thank you very much. Comments from council?
I would have to say kudos to Darren. He's done a very good job. Every time I've had a question, he's explained it in a way that it's understandable, makes the complicated easy, and I thank you for that.
Mayor, I would just say that, you know, I think the hardest period is the transition period. You're coming from a different background or a different structure to a new structure, a lot of different people. I'm sure the transition was the hardest part, and we're past that. You know, you've answered my questions. Some of them you didn't have right away, but you looked for them, and I appreciate that. We are in pretty good shape financially, although we keep missing the energy tax. That is a tax that we did instill, and it is an additional tax. But keep up the good work. Enjoy working with you. Congratulations on your award.
Thank you.
Congratulations, Darren, and thank you very much for choosing Shakopee. We are very fortunate to have the integrity and fortitude of your leadership in finance to come to Shakopee. You have made, in a short period of time, our finance structure better, the transparency better. Thank you for all that you do.
Thank you.
Yeah, Darren, you know, from this position, when you came in, it was like, change is really hard for some people, and we've made changes, and it's all been for the better. And just because we've always done something this way, doesn't mean it's always the best way. And some of the changes you've implemented and the transparency you've brought to us in this community makes our job easy, so thank you.
And Darren, we were in transition when you came here, and when Mr. Reynolds told us about his plan of revamping the budget process, and you came on board, we knew that you were the guy that was gonna do that and get us through this last couple years, and maybe another one, because we did say it would be a 3-year process. I think that you've always answered questions. You've always been there for anything we've had, and just really appreciate everything that you've done for this organization.
Thank you. It's been a pleasure working with each and every one of you as well. So I truly look forward to coming to work every day, and it's exciting, and it's always a different day. So it's a different challenge. So it makes it exciting. So I would like to thank my family as well too. I don't know if I did that the first time around, but this is the first night out of like, would have been 5th or 6th night in a row that we've had hockey games. So I'm glad we didn't have one tonight, so we were able to make it as well too. So thank you for that. So appreciate it.
Thank you. Moving ahead then to item number 4, approval of the agenda. Are there any changes, corrections, or deletions? Mr. Reynolds?
The only thing is, Mr. Mayor, as you previously mentioned, the Officer of the Year was not available tonight. That will be presented on the 20th.
Okay, Councilor Whiting?
I'll make a motion to approve the agenda as modified.
Second.
I have a motion and a second. Further discussion? Discussion. All in favor, say aye. Aye. Those opposed, motion passes. Thank you. Item number 5, consent agenda. Any changes, additions, corrections? Mr. Reynolds?
No, sir.
Okay. Councilor Lehman?
I'll move the consent agenda.
Second.
I have a motion and a second. Before we vote, then we will read the consent agenda into the public record. And Mr. Reynolds.
Well, thank you, Mr. Mayor. These are the consent agenda items for February 7th of 2018. 5A1 is actually one of those transparency issues that we just talked about that Darren has been working on. It approves the creation of a lodging tax special revenue fund and amends the 2018 budget. And just really quick, that takes it out of the general fund and makes it easier for people to see. 5A2 approves the minutes for the January 16, 2018 meeting. 5A3 approves a massage therapist license for Yun Lan Shakopee Therapeutic at 115 Holmes Street South. 5B1 adopts resolution number R2018 tax 007, which authorizes a grant application to FEMA for firefighter equipment. And 5C1 awards a bid for the Mill Pond Weir Repair Project STS TAC 18 TAC 005 to New Look Contracting Incorporated in the amount of $99,820.
Thank you very much. The consent agenda has been read into the record. We have a motion and a second. There is no discussion then. Therefore, all in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Those opposed? The consent agenda passes. Thank you very much. Moving ahead, item number 6. Now I'd like to call on any resident that would like to come forward and speak on an item not on the agenda. If you'd come forward, state your name and address for the record on an item not on the agenda tonight. Welcome.
Good evening. My name's Mary Isaacson. I live at 703 Lewis Street, Shakopee, Minnesota. I own a business at 124 Home Street. So I was here last month. The process with what was the property of the old city hall. And I stated last, I would like to see a parking lot there, centrally located for all businesses. I was wondering, were the bids, and did we get bids, and is that closed now? That was one of my questions. And then one other question for you was, is the land for sale? Let's say if I wanted to buy the land and put up my own parking lot. I mean, is that a viable option also, or, I'm saying. So I like I said, I want to sort of be right in there that I want a parking lot. And then I was just wondering if that is viable, is that, or have you, or like I said, and then somebody did ask me, as the bids done being taken, and if they wanted to put something in. And so I have not seen anything written or the property on the market or, things of that nature.
Mr. Reynolds?
Mr. Mayor, as council is aware, the bids came back on the 5th. We have one project that will be moving forward for your review on the 13th. In regards to the property, I think it's always been a goal of city staff to actually put people on the space as opposed to creating space that people might be on. But ultimately, if council determines they want a parking lot there, that's clearly their perusal, and I think that would be a real miss for putting a piece of property that has a lot of potential to transform a portion of downtown into something a little more alive, if you will. And I think it's safe to say that there are a lot of communities that would love the problems that we have, and apparently the perception of a downtown parking issue is one of them, and we will continue to work to address those issues.
Does that answer some of your questions? We're going to discuss a request for a proposal on the 13th.
To be
Then I
clear,
would
I'm
just-
sorry, if I may, to be clear, the proposal on the 13th does not address that particular parcel. We did not receive any bids on that particular piece.
Councilor Lehman?
Mayor, one of the questions that was asked by the citizen is that time period closed for putting in a bid on something for that parcel?
There's no bids on it right now. I
Is
think
the time window closed for somebody to come forward with a proposal?
the next piece is that we talk about that on the 13th as to what the will of council is
Okay.
in regards to opening up a process again or something else.
Okay, that was her question.
Yeah.
Well, then I would just, like you did, I just would like to point out too, again, like I said, the last month was, when you're looking at all the options, keep in the back of your mind, parking. Whatever you put in there, they're gonna need somewhere to park. and then there isn't enough. You know, and I'm looking at the perspective of somebody running downtown to run into the store or something. They're not going to want to walk 3 blocks. And I've heard when you go down to the Viking game or you go and you have to walk three blocks, they're not going downtown to watch Viking game. They're not going to these big events. They're going downtown just to live. I mean, they just want to be convenient and easy to get around. And again, the buildings were there long before a space was available for parking. They built the buildings, and so now we're conforming. We're trying to fit them all in there. So that's why I just like, you know, just to keep that in mind. Where are they going to park if you build something there? Thank you.
Thank you very much. Any other resident would like to come forward and make comment on an item not on the agenda? Please come forward. Seeing none, we will move ahead. Item number 7, business removed from consent. There was none. Item number 8, recess for the EDA meeting. And we will stand in recess for the EDA.
So we'll call the Shakopee Economic Development Authority for February 7th, 2018 to order. And the secretary will please note the roll. Everybody should have a copy of the agenda and the packet in front of them. So,
Mr. President, item number 4B will be removed from the agenda.
okay.
Thank you, sir.
Mr. Marsh?
Mr. President, with that, I would make a motion to approve the modified EDA agenda.
Let's start with item number 3, which is consent business. Or, I'm sorry, you're right. Approval of the agenda with 4A removed.
4B.
4B,
4B, yes, sir.
okay. Got to switch these two around. And is there a second, Mr. Whiting? Mr. Luce, do you have a question? Second? Okay. Well, Mr.
Yeah, I was
Mars
pointing at
made the motion. Mr. Whiting seconded it. Sorry, I didn't see how it looked that way. Any discussion? Hearing none, all in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, motion passes. Consent business motion, Mrs. Mokel.
I will make a motion to approve consent business.
Is there a second? Second by Mr. Luce. Consent business includes just our EDA minutes. All in favor of the motion, say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, motion passes. General business, number 4. 4A. Resolution number E 2018-002 for interfund loan for advance of certain cost in connection with proposed tax increment financing district. Mr. Kursky.
Mr. President, members, we've had these before on several projects. Currently, for Canterbury, we are spending staff time and some consultant time to bring something forward to you. This allows, should that move forward, that the city can get reimbursed for that time. So the EDA would need to approve it, as would the city council, so it's also on your council agenda.
Mr. Whiting.
And as you said, this is only if the TIF district moves forward. If it doesn't move forward, we're going to have to absorb those costs.
Remember, that's correct. So we can, by statute, bill staff time, so Darren and I in particular have been spending a lot of time on this, as has the Public Works Director. So we're actually billing our time against that because that's a requirement. If it were not moved forward, it would just come off our general time. Plus, we have Springstead is running the financial analysis that you'll see, I think it's March 6th, and has done the draft of the plan. That would just get into the normal funds of the EDA, pay for that if the district were not moved forward. This allows reimbursement.
Thank you.
Mr. Marsh.
Commissioners, I should mention too that our TIF application fee pays for a lot of the upfront costs on that as well too. So,
So
if the TIF
the-
application didn't go through, or the TIF plan didn't go through, the TIF application fee would pay for a majority of those costs
Canterbury
on the
did
front end.
pay a $12,000 fee, and they also paid for the first redevelopment study, and they also paid for a second redevelopment study. So we just asked for reimbursement for that today.
Mr. Mars?
And then, so this is a vehicle to get reimbursed if it moves forward, as previously mentioned. And then also my second question there, it's a cap of 300,000 at this point?
Members, yes, that's correct. So this is more for what I'll call getting us to the starting gate. That would be reimbursed out of the TIF should it occur. And if it does occur, we would also get, on an annual basis, the 10% administration fee.
I like the horse racing reference.
Any other questions? I have a couple questions.
Yes, sir.
So $300,000, the TIF application fee is $12,000, and we're looking for an interfund loan of $300,000 to cover staff's cost. Is our TIF application fee too low to where we're now using future taxes to reimburse us should it move forward?
So there's some time we're spending right now for staff time and for consultants to kind of get us to the starting line. There'll be a lot of other time spent if the district were to move forward before the district actually takes place. Because you remember, it takes about 2 tax cycles to take place. So in between those 2 tax cycles is when we'll be spending that money, and this way we can get reimbursed. So it's anything 6 months backwards and any time moving forward. So for the next 2 years, if that district were to happen, there would be no revenue coming into the district because it falls on the second tax year. So this allows us to get reimbursed that time and money.
Okay, and a second question. I read this document, actually both of them, a couple of times, and one of the lines says that the only way to get reimbursed is if a TIF district is approved, and it would be paid back off the increment of that TIF district.
Correct. So what we're doing right now is we log our time in under a special code, so it's accumulating that time towards the district. If the district were to get approved, going forward until the increment comes in, we would still bill that time and we'd be able to recapture all that money. If we don't do that right now, basically we can't recapture any of the time or consultants we spend on this.
I guess my concern is that if we spend some of this money and we don't approve a TIF, then the taxpayers are just out that money.
True, you're out the money, particularly most of it is a lot of staff time. So that's already built into your budget. What we're trying to do is create another revenue stream that would come out of the TIF district in 2 years to repay all the city staff time.
I understand that portion of it. I guess if the fee is $12,000, it's not covering the actual staff time of the project. And if that's a consistent problem, then we need to change our fees to reflect that.
And I would say that most of our fees for any project in the city don't cover 100% of the staff time. So
Well, in this case, if it's 300 compared to 12,000, it doesn't cover but a percentage of it.
and again, that 300 would be over the next 2.5 years. Because that would mean the district would occur, and so the time spent from the day the district's approved until the tax revenue comes in, we would be able to recapture that all out of the TIF district.
Well, you're taking it from future taxpayers, is really what's happening. The last comment I would have is, would it make any sense to see the actual TIF proposal, to see if there's support prior to spending money?
Well, in order to get you to the TIF proposal, we've had to spend money. This allows us to get reimbursed for that should it move forward. As I said, on the major expenses so far have been, I think it's LHB, which has been the redevelopment consultant. Canterbury has reimbursed us for the first phase of that, and they'll reimburse us for the second phase. They're not currently reimbursing us for our financial consultants' review. They have their own, and our financial consultants actually reviewing their financial consultants' numbers.
Okay, Mr. Lewis.
So if I get this right, basically what you're telling us, this is just the cost of doing business. You have to spend some money up front in order to get to a certain point, and after that point, when it's agreed to, then the TIF district pays for it. So this is just an upfront cost.
Yes, sir, and it's not $300,000 up front. I think you've seen bills for probably $10,000 or $20,000 over the past few months. we're gonna get the public hearing March 6th, and then you'll make a decision, yes or no, and that, they've already paid the 12,000, which covers some of that, and they've already paid for the major consultant. This is to cover staff time for road construction and, you know, meeting with their engineers, working with their engineers, moving forward, should it get approved. Otherwise, we cannot get reimbursed for that, because we have to get this done as part of reimbursement before the district's approved.
Mr.
Okay.
President.
Go ahead.
Mr. President, or Commissioners, it is a cap as well too, so we want to make sure that we're liberal enough on that cap, because if we happen to exceed that cap, we can only go up to that certain amount. So there's probably a buffer built into that cap as well too, so we pick an arbitrary amount that's significantly high enough to cover any unforeseen circumstances as well too. So, and as Mr. Kursky mentioned too, it's incremental. We don't transfer the whole thing at the front. It's as needed basis. So, and there is an interest rate included in there as well too. So the general fund would stay whole with interest as well.
Mr. Marsh?
No, I think that this has to be in place first, and it's a reimbursement mechanism for if it moves forward. You know, I think that you gotta spend some money to find out, and sometime, in any decision, sometimes you have to do that, and, sometimes you put money into a decision and you don't move forward, well, that's a cost, but here, this has to be in place, like Counselor Luce said, to get to the next step. So with that, I would offer Resolution E2018-202 that authorizes for the reimbursement of a possible TIF funds for staff and consult time for the development of public infrastructure and associated costs and funding mechanisms for the redevelopment for Canterbury Park.
I'll second that with an amendment. I think you said 202, it's 002.
002.
A motion by Mr. Marsh, seconded by Mr. Whiting with the friendly amendment stating the actual resolution number as in the memo. Any discussion or comments? I actually have a couple more comments. The 4% rate is not consistent with what we charge. It's 5%. And I'm comparing that to what we actually charge a resident for a road assessment project.
Actually, Mr. President, I think it's a statutory cap on that. I think there's a 4% cap on those interfund loans via this TIF, I believe. I'm not 100% certain on that, but I think that that's kind of the max piece that we're allowed statutorily to charge on that, but I can
So-
get back to you on that.
So they cap an interfund loan for developments,
And I think
but
it's,
what we charge our constituents for a road project is higher.
But we're paying it with our constituents' money, so it's,
Well, we're paying for the road with the constituents' money,
but
too.
so we want to take the interest off of what we already tax people to pay for the cost of this tax.
Well, I'm looking for consistency across the board.
yeah. And I think that that's the max piece of that, but I'll confirm that and get back to you guys.
And then can you compare that with what we charge our, like on a road assessment?
Correct. I think our road assessments have been about 5% or 5.5%, 5% or so, and that's something too that now with interest rates increasing now the last year, that's something we'll probably have to look at again for 2018 when we do that assessment, is that it may,
Which could make the disparity worse. This would be
True.
capped at 4%, and a resident might pay 6 or 6.5%, which that's going the wrong direction in my
Right,
mind.
right.
If it's good for the goose, it should be good for the gander. But I digress. My last concern is, again, we're putting money out there, and we're basically saying the only way to get paid back is by approving whatever comes forward. You're kind of committing to approving whatever comes forward or letting the money go, losing it. So, with that being said, that kind of put the school district in a bad spot operating that way, and I don't want to follow that same path. So, we do have a motion and a second. Mr. Luce?
No, the one good thing is this is coming forward fairly quickly, so if it does get shot down, the dollar amount should be fairly low. It's not like it's gonna drag out 6 months and then come to a vote.
Mr. Reynolds?
Mr. President, staff have a responsibility to do the work regardless. The the application is in front of us. We have the responsibility to go through it. We have the responsibility to make sure that we're doing everything that we need to do, including hiring consultants, as Mr. Kursky pointed out, to make sure that their financials are in place. So that's going to happen regardless. What we're doing is trying to recoup some of that expense.
Right. I totally get that. The more we add on to other costs besides the actual TIF infrastructure cost, the less future tax dollars that go to the general fund to help offset services and stuff like that, so. Any other comments or questions? Seeing none, all in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Aye. Motion passes 4-1. Reports number 5, EDA bill list. Yes, 4B has been removed. Any questions on the bill list? Mr. Marsh?
Mr. President, I'd offer a motion to approve the EDA bill list in the amount of $182,934.72.
Is there a second to the motion?
I'll second.
Motion by Mr. Marsh, seconded by Mr. Luce. Ms. Mokel?
That's fine.
Oh, you're fine. Okay, I thought Mr. Reynolds had to say something.
Did have your hand up?
I have, for item 6, sir.
Okay. The one question I had on the memo information, I don't know who this is for, either Mr. Kursky or Darren. The year-to-date actual shows $2.4 million. Is that an accurate number of what's in this account?
Mr. President, Council, or Commissioners, that is accurate as of now, but we have not finished all our year-end accounting as well,
Okay.
too. So there is some, in that number is probably the downtown project with the parking lot and the alley that we have not done transfers yet, to reallocate some of those costs over to the stormwater fund and such like that.
Yep.
So that number would be likely expected to come down.
My question is, why are we not using the 300,000 out of the 2.4 million that's in that fund for what we just recently talked about in the TIF? Why are we not using 300,000 from a EDA fund that has $2.5 million in it as a loan, or to cover the expenses of the 300,000?
So we can talk a little bit about that next week. There's going to be money coming in and money going out. I think Mr. Nelson pointed out. So what we've done is, from a simple accounting standpoint, all or most of the downtown bills came into the EDA, and so that may be the balance, but there's also money that's been going out there. And they're going to actually do, as part of an accounting transaction, move all of the things into assets and into other funds, so that number will change.
Okay. I assume we're going to know how this all changes, where this money goes?
Yes, sir. I mean, when you all approved that budget, there was 1.5 million that you'd set aside. There was money out of the stormwater fund. There was money that came in from the SMSC for the statue. All of that's kind of in one pot right now. We have a spreadsheet that was provided by our consultant, broken out by percentages of where all the money is supposed to go. So they will do that, and they'll make accounting adjustments for that. So a lot of the fixtures are going to become city assets, basically, or EDA assets. So street lights, a lot of the improvements actually will become assets and won't be expensed out.
I guess I'm not convinced that we don't have $300,000 in the EDA fund to use on the TIF preparations for Canterbury when it's showing $2.5 million.
Mr. President, if we looked at that EDA budget when we approved at the end of 2017, we had the levy balance there, but there really isn't a big balance in the EDA fund itself, and we're using the money that we generate is basically all going out via the sources it has. So this 2.5 million is actually expenditures in the fund, and it's not a revenue in that. So it's $2.4 million of expenditures for 2017.
So the budget is 350, and it shows expenses of 350.
The budget for
There's a 20,
2018.
Yeah, we got a
Right.
budget, yeah.
right.
So what is the current balance in the EDA fund?
I don't know offhand. I'd have to look at that. With our year-end accounting won't be done here for probably another month, month and a half or so for the EDA fund. But it's probably not more than 150,000, somewhere in that ballpark,
As
is
soon
where
as
the
you,
fund balance is at.
Because one of the things you've done is you've approved, for instance, facade loans.
Yep.
So that's a liability, but we're showing the cash right now, but we have to also book that because at some point, we're gonna have to pay off those facade loans. So,
well, if you could just get that out to us, that'd be great.
okay.
Motion and a second, Mr. Whiting?
Motion to adjourn to Tuesday, March 6th,
We're
of
gonna
2018.
vote on this motion first,
Oh, we have the bill list? Okay.
okay? Any other discussion on the motion before us? All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion passes. Bill list.
Sure.
And I was a yay, by the way, on the bill list. Number 6, Mr. Reynolds.
Just really quick, Mr. President, the adjournment will be till Tuesday, February 13th. We will go into closed session to discuss the bid that we have for the project that we were talking about earlier. So February 13th at 7 PM.
All right.
Make a motion to adjourn to February 13th at 7 PM.
And is there a second?
Second.
Seconded by Mr. Luce. And let the public be aware that that date has been changed from March 6th to February 13th. Any discussion? All in favor, say aye. Aye. Opposed? We are adjourned. Thank you.
We'll reconvene the City of Shakopee City Council meeting for February 7th, 2018. Completed our EDA meeting. Now we are on to 10A1, Shakopee High School CAP presentation. Kristen.
Good evening. If you give me 1 minute to set up here. Mayor, council members, we're here today to talk a little bit about our partnership with the Shakopee High School CAPS program. I have with me Rachel Paulson, who's an instructor at the Shakopee High School, and also Nancy Thule, and your title is Director of Teaching and Learning with the school district. So I'm just going to start by talking a little bit about how the city's worked with the CAPS program, and they're going to jump in and tell you a little bit more about the program. So maybe we'll start right there. You guys want to explain the program? Sure.
Well, thanks for having us here tonight. I think you'll be impressed with our kids' presentations. But this is our third year of the Shakopee CAPS program. We actually have 3 programs. One that you'll see our kids tonight are from the digital design program, but we also have a healthcare program and then one that is in business as well. We are blessed in the fact that the community has been very supportive, as well as our city council, in working with our CAPS program. It is a half-day immersion program for juniors and seniors at Shakopee High School. They get high school elective credit as well as concurrent enrollment in transcripted credit from Normandale Community College. 3 periods out of 7, so it's quite a commitment of time. First semester, they go out to their host business partner and do projects for the business partner as well as for other partners in the community. And then that leads to them going to an individual internship second semester. And the city has been involved with our design kids, I think maybe for sure the full 3 years. You know, one of the things, and then I'm going to turn it over to Rachel, but I just wanted to say thank you because there's about 5 CAPS programs in the metro area right now. Ours is unique in one, I think, really special way, and that is ours is the only one in the metro that actually has kids immersed in the business place. Often the other programs that you see around the metro, they're in lease space or in a segment of the school, and the business partners come to them. And when you ask the other CAPS programs why they make that choice versus what we do, their standard answer is because they can't find partners who are willing to allow kids on site basically 5 days a week for a semester. And I think it shows what a special place that Shakopee is, that we've absolutely never had that as an issue. We've had wonderful partnerships, including the city, and it just shows what a special community it is and how they are very invested in the development of our students. So with that, I'm going to turn that over to Rachel.
Do you want me to talk a little bit about how we worked? Sure. First, okay. I'll jump back in here, just talk a little bit how we've worked with Ms. Paulson, and then she can kind of tell you a little bit more about the digital design program. As Nancy mentioned, we've worked with them for about 3 years. The students have done phenomenal work for us. We've worked with them in a number of ways. The last 2 years, we actually had students design our cleanup day flyers, which you probably received in your Shakopee Public Utility bills. The last 2 years, we've had CAPS interns. In 2016, we had Jade, and then last year we had Samantha. You can see Samantha's standing by some of her work down there at Huber Park in that picture. This year, we have doubled our interns, so we actually have 2 design students. We have, in the communications department, we have Bradley Viacek, who's actually one of our students who are here tonight. And our Park and Rec department has Isabel Roberts, who's another student here tonight. So they did such great work for us this fall that we decided to keep them on with us this spring. Just wanted to throw up a couple examples of the work that our interns have done over the last 2 years. We don't have a graphic designer on staff, so to have students come in and do anything from videos to flyers. Each year they do our whole Huber Park performance series. Excuse me. And actually I believe Isabel right now is doing some marketing materials for the community center as we move ahead and expand that facility. So this fall, we worked with them on 2 specific projects. We, as staff, had an opportunity to go in and present these projects to the students. Then they were teamed up in groups. I believe they chose what they wanted to work on, and these were the 2 that they're going to be showing you tonight. The first one is branding Shakopee Government TV, which is what we're all on live on tonight. And then the second one was branding the Enigma Teen Center, which had been closed during construction. And when they opened up again this fall, they really wanted to come back with a bang and make sure teens know what they are. So, Ms. Paulson, I don't know if you want to say anything about some of the work students have done?
Yeah, I'm so grateful that we have the opportunity to give this opportunity to our students. The authentic project work adds so much value to what these students are doing, and they take things very seriously. And as an instructor, it's just so rewarding to see these students grow so much in a single year or a single semester, both professionally and personally. And most of these students say they walk away with more confidence and confidence in communication and confidence in speaking to adults. And so through this project work, it allows these students to just really blossom, and it's just so fun to see and watch that happen. So I think I'll turn it over to the students now because they have a much better story to tell. So.
On the desktop. This is Leo Lickford and Bradley Viacek.
Hi, I'm Leo Lickfold. And I'm Bradley.
Welcome.
All right, so we were the 2 students who rebranded the Shakopee Government TV station, and we're going to go through this presentation. Some of the slides we're going to go over a little quicker than others, just because the information is less taxing to keep it brief. So we had 3 deliverables or objectives that we needed to get done: a new logo, some on-screen graphics, and a new intro video. So to begin with, the logo, we made a couple brainstorming ideas, which you could see on the screen. And here are just some images of other news and broadcasting programs that we thought we could take some inspiration from. So while we were creating the logo, we wanted to make sure that we followed some specific guidelines, such as fonts and colors,
to make sure that the new logo fits the branding of the city. So here, these are a bunch of different iterations and ideas that we came up with for the logo, and in the end, we decided to go with this logo.
And then next, we worked on the on-screen graphics, like the date and the agenda item. You can see the original ones on screen now. And then, so first we got some inspiration from other TV programs like CNN with their banners, or the logos on screen from like National Geographic, or even Cartoon Network. Any TV station has the logo on screen.
So do we sometimes, right?
Next, we have some more just rough draft type of graphics we decided to make and show Miss Doran. And then we moved on with one of them and made 6 more iterations of the one to create these. This is the final set of on-screen graphics we're going to have with the date, the agenda item on the bottom, and then the name. And moving on, we have the video. I had a meeting with Miss Doran about the video. Here are some notes. We wanted to change the intro music to not jazz. It's pretty much the main
hot
thing
jazz.
there.
No.
Scanner.
We have that intro video on the, we will show you that now. So that will play before any city council meeting instead of the kind of the fly-through of the photos with the jazz music. We felt like that more fit with the feel of the meeting, just more of a professional, just getting you ready to listen. So going into some stuff we learned while doing this project, one of the main ones was collaboration with a real client. I'm going to go into this a little bit later, but working with a real client instead of doing something through school for a grade is much different. It gives more of a meaning to it.
And of course, collaboration with each other. We learned that you have to be able to build off of each other's strengths, and then that builds stronger relationships, and also your product turns out a lot better.
Some more things we learned: time management. There's very different ways that time management is in school versus a real project with a professional client. In school, there's a set day, but it's more flexible. With this, we had a date that we needed to get it done, and we had to make our own specific dates to make sure we timed everything out so we could get the best product in the amount of time we had. And so just some ways CAPS changed us.
So in the end, probably the biggest takeaway would be the experience that we got from CAPS with working with real people, real clients, and then the work that you do, you know that it's going out there. So people will be able to see your work, and it's more meaningful. You're not doing it for a grade. You're doing it so the community benefits.
Yeah, just that part of it's way more meaningful, and just gives you more of a sense of I'm making something that's going to be used and appreciated instead of put in my mom's drawer to never be seen after my teacher stamps an A on it. So I just feel like CAPS really helps grow as professionals and make everything seem more meaningful, and just kind of teaches you to be an adult. we'd just like to say thank you to the city for allowing us to have this opportunity to work on an actual city project that will be used.
Counselor Whiting?
You know, I looked at your work there, and I think it looks great, and I appreciate your hard work. I myself had experience with a work immersion program in high school and thought it pretty beneficial. Still work in that industry, so good luck and great job.
Thank you.
Counselor Lewis?
Go ahead, where I got my phone.
Counselor Mokel?
I just want to say congratulations. This was a great job. Yes, it will be hard for your mom to put this in a drawer in the refrigerator, but maybe as a screensaver or something. I've had the privilege of being on the advisory council since the beginning, so watching you kids each year do these things and watching you grow, I'm proud of you. Not only as a council member, but you know, I have kids. I'm proud of you as a parent too. So congratulations.
Counselor Lehman?
First, I want to say that I think Mom will probably put this in a drawer. It's going to be probably more special than some of the other things because of its in the public and for a real client type. I think moms and dads putting things in drawers is special, and this one will probably go there and be extra special. The CAPS program to me is a lot like pre-vocational or trade school, which are both good things. But, you know, there's a lot to be said for a vocational or a trade school because you're really in instruction, yet you're oftentimes working for actual real clients in that field. And you're getting possibly a lifelong career. So what you're doing is a great thing, and I think it's real close to that kind of a model. Nice product that you put together. I like the way that you looked at a lot of different things and tried to come up with some rationale behind your thought process. And I do have a couple of questions for the people from the school district, and I'll wait until we're done here to ask them that. Thank you.
Counselor Lewis?
Yeah, as a couple of them have said, your mom can put it in the drawer, but it's going to be pretty tough when it's on the video screen constantly. I'm sure she's going to be bragging to all her friends that, you know, look what my son did and his friend. And I'm just curious, how did you find staff to work with? Were they very engaging? Did you learn a lot through them?
Yeah, most definitely. Miss Dorn is very easy to work with, she's a very nice lady. It's just, working with her felt like, we were just kind of communicating very fluidly to get the job done.
I think that's it. Ms. Doran's very laid back, and it worked out very well.
Well, just remember, not everybody's that laid back, but I'm glad she was very helpful for you.
Gentlemen, thank you very much. You know, we're a thankful city now that we've updated the logo and the graphics and the video. Great work. It's really a win-win from that aspect, a great partnership. You get credit. City gets a value too, and yeah, I agree that your work will be seen here in our community every couple weeks on TV, which is great, and I think that should be a real sense of pride for you. Thank you.
Mayor, I have a couple questions for the school personnel, if they're still here.
Oh, is there more present?
Teachers?
Yeah, there's
Mar-
more.
oh, I'm sorry.
A little bit more of a presentation.
I'm sorry. I can wait until afterward.
Thank you, guys. So Amy and Isabel are going to show some work they did for Enigma Teen Center.
Okay, I'm Isabel Roberts.
And I'm Amy Nguyen.
Welcome.
So the objective of our client project was to create a more permanent brand for the Enigma Teen Center. In the past years, they had the teens wanted to be involved, so they had them create new logos each year. And with the totally new remodeling of the community center, Brad thought it was the perfect opportunity to create a more permanent brand, and he gave that responsibility to us.
And
so in the beginning when we were pitched this project, the Enigma Center just relaunched. So these are some of our brainstormed ideas. It was a lot of word logos. And we decided to go with a more retro feel since it was catering towards junior high kids. And we had a combination of ideas that we ultimately ended with this as our final project. And we knew that the Enigma Teen Center had a big yellow wall in the room, and we wanted to incorporate that somehow, and also cobalt blue lamps. And that was just kind of the inspiration behind our logo.
And then up here is just an example of the two flyers that we created. On the left is the more adult with a lot of information so parents can know that it's a fun, safe environment to send their kids. And on the right is something that's more appealing to kids with the images, less text, and shows what kind of activities they provide. So me and Amy were able to collaborate very easily because we were in the same place each morning at Shutterfly. We typically met with Brad once a week and shared our ideas and our progress that we've been making with the project and to move forward.
And then some of the brainstormed ideas, these are the fonts that we use and also the color codes, which I explained a little bit earlier. And then with our time doing this client project, we learned a lot of time management. We initially thought that this design process would take a lot shorter, but it took most of the, I would say, 2 months.
One of the things when you're designing with a client is you really have to get a feel for how much they want to be involved with the project. It seemed like Jamie and Brad both wanted to have a say in how things looked, and we just shared every idea we have with them, got their feedback, and I think we both found it very beneficial because it was a lot easier for us to know what we should and shouldn't do. So I'm a very introverted person and I don't really like to branch out and try new things, but my goal for this semester was to take on at least one leadership role during a project, and Amy let me do that. I basically just did a lot of the emailing to our client, set up a timeline for when different aspects of the project should be done so we can complete this on time, and really just kind of took the leadership roles.
And then my part was more following Isabel's lead, and I found it valuable to learn skills that when you're following someone, that it's an equal collaboration of ideas, but also when you have a lead, you follow them because they know what they're doing. And I think that in the CAPS program, it's building a lot of leaders and it's helping kids find that leadership opportunity.
We just learned that it's very important to communicate, no matter if it's with your client or your teacher or your peers, just letting them know when you'll be gone or anything. Just being very open and honest is the most helpful thing.
And what we've learned mostly with working adults is that adults are people too, and that it's not scary to work with someone who's more experienced in your field, and it's not like difficult to ask questions or to seek advice when you need it. It's usually a really open environment, and they understand that you're working to better yourself, and then it's an equal collaboration on both sides.
So something I've learned from taking CAPS, I've just grown so much technically as a designer. I've learned way more things on our software programs, and from Ms. Paulson, she's taught me a lot of different things. I've gotten better at collaborating with others and taking on leadership roles, feeling more comfortable doing that. The opportunity to work on real-world client projects has been amazing, and we're able to use our professional skills to work with adults. And I feel that CAPS has allowed me to explore many aspects of digital design, and I plan to pursue a degree in graphic design in my future. So.
And I've also learned a lot from CAPS. I've learned that especially when you're in a program like the digital design program, it's kind of a group of people who care more about the work that they produce, especially for an art class. Usually in high school, it's for the grade, it's for the teacher, it's not really anything that's seen to the public. And I think CAPS is super meaningful because even my current internship at Valley Fair, it's a lot of exposure to the public eye, and it's just a new appreciation for all of the work that you've done. And that I think that I will take that with me throughout my whole life. And I hope to incorporate more graphic design skills, since I do have a passion for this field in my future.
And as Kristen said before, I am interning with the Parks and Rec Department at the Community Center. I decided to do this because I really enjoyed the atmosphere and like the welcoming adults there when we were working on this client project. And I'm just creating different promotional materials for them. So hopefully you'll see that stuff in the future. Yep.
Thank you. Questions of council? Councilor Lewis?
I don't have a question so much as an observation. If you were introverted before this, you've done a very good in overcoming that. You did a very nice presentation along with your assistant there. You know, you referred to adults a couple of times. I think you might be better off just to refer to them as teammates. They're people working with you. They're not, you know, lording over you, and I hope they weren't. But, you know, you're at the age to where they're your peers. You know, you're part of the group. So, and you did a very great job. So, thank you.
Councilor? Councilor Whiting?
Yeah, great PowerPoint. Could learn some tips from you, that's for sure. And as Councilor Luce said, I think you, all four of you, have born leaders and did a great job with your presentation. You know, the whole CAPS program, I think, is creating such a community impact and an impact on our students and on our businesses. So I appreciate all your work and great job and good luck.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Councilor Lehman?
You know, I don't want to repeat everything I said to the first group, but the same applies to you, to your group. And I want to thank you, both groups, for your time and effort in the fields that you've chosen in the CAPS program to better not only yourself, but to better those that you interact with, which in this case happens to be the city of Shakopee, which encompasses every resident and business in the city limits. So thank you, folks. Pretty big undertaking.
And I just want to say to both of you, both groups too, because I do work in HR. So this is building your resume, and it's also building your contact list. Because a lot of the contacts that you make are where you get your next jobs. So this is the way to do that. And you guys are doing a really good job. So
Thank you.
Thank you very much. You do great work, lots to be proud of in the CAP agency. Tip of the hat to the CAP agency.
No.
CAPS program. CAPS group.
CAPS program.
Yeah, CAPS program.
You know, Mr. Mayor, from a fiscal standpoint, you know, you're looking at $15,000, $20,000 worth of work there. And of course, I'm always looking ways to save money, so I'm looking at the 2018 annual budget book. I don't know if you can see this, guys, but this is Mr. Nelson's cover.
Next year's
I think maybe next year we can work on that.
Thank you all again.
Mayor, can I ask my questions of the school?
Oh, yes.
staff? I thought since you were here, maybe a little PR out in the public would be good, and I do have a couple of questions. The CAPS program has certain areas. How many and what are they?
So our goal will be long-term that we'll have one CAPS program for each of our 6 academies that are at the high school. Right now, we have 3. The healthcare program is hosted by St. Francis first semester, and then they go out into individual internships. You know, and one of the neat things, and our students refer to it, but we actually have a really strong curriculum around professional skills, and our students have to interview and get an offer of an internship, which is also something that I think is a little unique in the programs when you compare us to some of the other CAPS programs. Business is actually hosted in 2 different locations. We're at Valley Fair at the first half of the semester, and the second half of the semester is at Mystic Lake. Not at the casino, off their developmental center, which is just off of that area. And so they get very contrasting experiences there. Canterbury has been involved with them as well during that time, as well as the Renaissance Festival. So they get a wide variety of experiences there. and then they all get placed second semester. Right now, I think we have about 65 kids in the program. Each program kind of runs in that area of about 10 or 20 to about 25. Because of the concurrent enrollment, the guidelines for Normandale is that they don't really want more than 25 kids in the program, so.
Okay. And what happens with the insurance liability?
Yeah, you know, so Mike Berlager, our finance person at the time when we started the program, and this was typical of our others as well, has said that because we really basically are doing school at that site, our insurance policies cover that. So when kids are on a field trip or anything like that, it's the same, so.
And then who would be the contact person if somebody wanted to get involved, if a business or something wanted to get involved?
Yeah, so basically Ed Cox is our teaching and learning supervisor, and he is the coordinator for the CAPS program, but any of our teachers or Ed Cox would be the person, or myself, because we do too.
Thank
and
you.
Several of our council members also help with our industry councils and several other programs that we're trying to work on as well with developing CAPS in the academies. So.
Thank you.
Thanks.
Counselor Luce?
So did River South come in as a group, or did you have to acquire each one of them to come in one at a time?
River South came in as a group.
Good, good, glad to hear that.
Yeah. We tried hosting in 3 locations the first year, and that was too much movement for the kids, so that after the first year, we decided they agreed we should be in 2 locations, so.
Counselor Whiting?
So, Counselor Lehman and I, or you mentioned it, but I also remember the more trades function of some of the vocational technical schools when we were growing up, but this is more of a professional
Correct.
Training, and I think that offers a lot more experience level to bring it up a little bit. I mean, trades are still out there, and there's still a value to that,
Yep.
but I think the professional level helps with their college careers.
Yeah.
And
Well, I think what they have in common is the trades programs, and we have a little bit of that too at the high school as well. They often do authentic projects for community businesses or community members, so that piece is similar. But like you said, Jay, a lot more around professional skills, the Normandale College credit, those kind of are some of the unique aspects, and really just that individual internship, you know, really hones kids, I think, almost like what you would see at the college level where they're doing their internship. It really gives them a jump start into that kind of experience, helps them identify what they might want to do after high school.
it's a great program, and I'm glad we have it in our community.
Yeah.
This real-life, hands-on training for our youth is phenomenal.
Yeah.
And, you know, the youth is our future, and the opportunity for them to actually touch those real projects and be involved and make an impact, that's awesome. Thank you. Counselor Luce?
My understanding is this whole CAPS program is at no cost to the kids?
No, it's not. And in fact, one of the things I love about our program is it's really low cost as a program in general, because a lot of the other districts are leasing space for their programs. We have nothing like that. The host area, you know, our host sites, we're there free of charge. Often if we have unique needs, we'll say like, well, maybe we're gonna, I remember, I think in Rachel's case, we thought we needed a printer. No, Shutterfly said, no, we'll just give you one. You know, that's our experience. And the teachers would be teaching on-site. They're just off-site for this portion of their day. So it's a very low-cost program, but I think a huge game changer for our students in terms of finding direction and doing meaningful work like they talked about today.
Follow-up?
I just need to apologize. I didn't mean to say kids. They're young professionals.
They are.
Thank you again so very much.
Well, thank you,
Thanks for
too,
having
for your
us. Thank you.
involvement. Yep.
All right, great presentation. Moving ahead then, 10A2 taxi business license, Lori will present.
Thank you, Mayor and Council. I'm here tonight to talk about a business license that has been applied for by Mr. Hay, and He has been a taxi driver for the last 9.5 years in our community. However, the business that he was working for decided not to renew their business license. And so he went through the process of purchasing the business and applying and going through our steps. The issue came with some omission on his application that the police department discovered. And generally, our policy is to deny an application based on that omission. However, since he was a taxi driver in our community for the last 9.5 years, I and my staff went to find possibly his original application, because all our taxi cab drivers and our taxi businesses the background checks are handled by our police department. However, it had met its retention, and I couldn't get my hands on the original. My premise was that on the original, he had put those items on his application. That's why he was approved and has been working in our community. However, he did omit it, and in the packet, you did receive a letter from him concerning that. Mr. Hagan is here if you have any questions for him, but we're leaving the decision up to you, council, so.
Thank you. Questions of staff? Have there been any other, in normal course of business, have there been any violations in regard to this driver, or?
There's been no violations that have come to my attention in the 9.5 years as we're a taxi driver for that company, so, no.
Thank you. Counselor?
Oh, sorry. So this is denied for the omission, but not for the infraction, correct?
Yeah, it's for the omission of not putting the past history on the application.
And how many years typically do we go back and look at those things for someone's driving record on a taxi cab driver?
I don't know how far back the police department does the background investigation. Our premise has always been, and we've always encouraged our applicants, that no matter what or when it's happened, to please put it on. Just because if they're going to find it, they're going to find it. And we'd rather have you tell us straight up, this is what happened. Yes, it was 30 years ago. And generally, if it had been on the application, if he was a brand new applicant and it had been on the application, even though there was those issues 30 years ago, the police department would probably have approved it anyways, because he had admitted it. So that's where we're in this dilemma. So we're just leaving it to you to make the decision tonight. And like I said, Mr. Hagan is here if you have any questions for him. Okay?
Other questions of staff? Other questions of staff? Counselor Lehman?
Mayor, I'm going to make a motion, and then I'd like to speak to it. I'm going to make a motion to approve the license for this taxi cab business, license for Tim Hagan, DBA, TNT Taxi.
Second.
I have a motion and a second on the table.
And then, Mayor, if I could speak to it for a second.
Yep,
The
Counselor Lehman?
the things that jump out to me in this is he was approved to be a taxi driver, licensed driver for over the past 9.5 years. So there was an approval process done for that to happen. The second thing I would say is if I go back 33 years in my own personal history, I
was going to mention that.
We have that somewhere.
I can honestly tell you, I wouldn't be able to tell you with any accuracy everything that I've done that was fun at the time. Short of having somebody do that background check and tell me what it was. I mean, seriously, who really in this room or anywhere can possibly remember what they've done that long ago? Okay? And for those reasons, I'm okay because of no incidents in the 9.5 years or whatever as a licensed taxi driver. I'm actually okay with approving this license.
Counselor Mokel?
I concur with everything that you have said, and I would kind of almost question, and because I'm not sure of how the approval process goes, but about having a limitation of 10 years or something like that versus saying any omission for, 33 years is a very long time. And like you said, I wouldn't remember. I went to the doctor last week. I couldn't remember 20 years ago. So I think that for me, and again, he'd been through this process and been approved, so obviously they had found it at some point. And he has had no infractions since then. That would be my other stipulation. If he would have had some infraction in between there, I could see it, but I concur with Counselor Lewis, or Counselor Lehman.
Counselor Whiting?
Yeah, I agree with both of you. And 30 years ago, I'm sure I was a good angel, but Mr. Lehman, no. Anyway.
One of us had fun.
No, that's right. But no, I agree. I think that maybe we take a look at the application process at another time, maybe reevaluate that and consider going back 10, 15 years, whatever is recommended to us by staff. But I'm a forgiving person, and he has been in our city working without any issues for 9.5 years or whatever it was. And although we have to be concerned, it's an omission. So if we have other applicants that come in and say, well, somebody else omitted that. So I would agree with you. I would caution us, though, that we, maybe make a concern on this, for the next application process.
Counselor Lehman?
Mayor, that's valid points. However, the fact that this individual was licensed in our city for the past 9.5 years and passed that, our own checks in order to be that, says something. And if, I think that by itself is basically saying that how can the same person pass all of our processes, be in service for 9.5 years, and then pass the same processes and not pass when nothing has changed, okay? If it's an omission on a new application, or whether our own process didn't retain the proper information from the past process, is splitting hairs. So I'm not really concerned about the same issue arising. I do have a concern when we talk about changing the policy and going back 10 years. That might be the right thing to do on certain areas of violations. It might not be proper in other cases, or
I'm
levels of
suggesting
crimes or
renewals.
something. I would say that I would just defer to law enforcement to tell us, this level of crime, we're going back this far, and a speeding ticket or a parking ticket we're only going back 5 years or something, or whatever, and let them do what their expertise area is and make that recommendation. So that was just my caution about a blanket 10 years.
Counselor Mokel?
And just to clarify, I was throwing 10 years
Yeah,
as
yep.
just a thought.
Sure.
But I agree with you.
Counselor Luce?
Yeah, I'd agree with pretty much everything that's been said about this, and I guess in order to keep him from being on the hot seat any longer, I'd just like to call the question. Let's get it over with for his sake.
I have a motion for approval and a second on the table. Question's been called, no further discussion. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Those opposed, motion passes. Thank you very much.
Do you want to say anything?
I think you're good.
You want to come? You're welcome, thank you. All right, moving ahead then to 10B1, appeal of a conditional use permit for exterior storage and in the light industrial zone, and Mr. Noble will present.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor, members of the council. Could use those students here to help with my PowerPoints prepared, so I'll have to chase them down. This is an appeal by Beacon Construction of a conditional use permit that the Board of Adjustment and Appeals approved on January 4th of 2018. The site in question is located at the northwest corner of 4th and Sarazen. There's a new industrial building under construction, and they were asking for a conditional use permit for exterior storage. The area identified in yellow is on the north side of their building. You can see on the east or on the west side of the screen, 4th Avenue runs east-west. The area in yellow would be their area of exterior storage. What they were proposing to store in this area was some equipment, some vehicles and some lifts, kind of like scissors lifts. They're a construction company, and the area that was shown on the previous screen would be used for storage of their construction vehicles and the scissor lifts. They are proposing to construct a 8-foot fence with fabric covering for screening purposes, and they're looking to have gravel, Class 5, for their storage area. When the board reviewed this conditional use permit, they did approve it with 10 conditions. I've highlighted 2 of the conditions, condition number 4 and condition number 8. Those were the conditions that the board approved that the applicant had concerns with. So they have appealed the board's decision to the city council. I believe you have received the letter from the applicant expressing their position. During the meeting, the Planning Commission Board of Adjustment did have extensive discussions on this project, asking what some of the concerns were from the neighboring property owners, types of vehicles, equipment to be stored in this area, frequency of movement of the equipment and vehicles, and what kind of surface did this business have at their existing site. They are located in Shakopee, in the eastern area of the community. Staff did give just answers to each of those questions. The applicant also provided some answers to the questions that's identified in the second paragraph. Essentially, there were some residential property owners were concerned that they would be able to view some of the vehicles and lifts above the 8-foot fence, and that there would be some scissor lifts that would be located in the site. Some of them would stick above the fence, some wouldn't. Their existing site is paved with asphalt, and the vehicles some would be moved somewhat regularly, some would be stored there for an extended period of time. Board also spent some time discussing whether to phase the paving requirement of the storage area and whether to phase the overall area of the storage area. In the end, they did recommend approval, or they did approve the request based on those conditions I showed you before, and the applicant is appealing that decision. In the resolution before you, staff did provide 5 findings that support the commission's, Board of Adjustment and Appeals decision, and also provided several conclusions that supported the board's position. So based on that, we've asked that the council support the Board of Adjustment and Appeals decision to approve this conditional use permit and deny the appeals. Are there any questions for staff?
Questions of staff? Question, Councilor Lewis?
Could you put that one aerial view up there, please?
Sure.
And this the appeal is appealing 2 parts of this? One for landscaping and one for paving of the outdoor storage, is that correct?
That is correct.
Nothing else is up for discussion?
They expressed those 2 conditions specifically.
Councilor Lewis?
No, I just wanted to get a little better view of, neighboring businesses and stuff like that. As far as residential, the residential's across the street, it's a main road. Anything on their side, on the north side of 4th Avenue, that's all businesses, except to the west, quite a distance. Do you know offhand what the distance to the west from the housing to this site is?
Yeah, I'm sorry, it doesn't show up on this screen. There are some residential properties approximately in this area. I'm not sure that distance. It's probably a good block or two.
Yeah, it looks like it's considerable, so there wouldn't be a whole lot of problem on that side, I don't think. Okay.
In your staff report, you mentioned that the proposed building is 28,000 square feet, with the outdoor storage being 18?
Yes.
Okay.
Yeah, one of the conditions of exterior storage is that area cannot exceed the footprint of the principal structure. So they're in compliance with that condition.
Counselor Lehman?
My first thought on this is there's a lot of uses surrounding this that have Class 5 surfaces. So reading the information that I have, it would appear that our own ordinance allows that. If the concern is dust, which is a valid concern, I guess I don't understand why that wouldn't be a listed concern in mitigating the dust with waterings or whatever if it becomes an issue. The second thought I have is any trees that were removed on site that are required to be replaced based on our tree ordinance, why would they not be put in a preferred location, which would accomplish the same thing?
Speaking on the landscaping, they did provide a landscaping plan with their original building permit that did meet our requirements. They did not submit the conditional use permit for the storage at the same time the building that came after. There are a few trees in the area of the storage area that they would need to replace, and they could use those around the perimeter of the storage area to help with the screening of that storage area. So they can use some of the existing trees that are going to be removed for the proposed storage area. And they have retained quite a few trees on the south side of the lot that help screen from the residential area. I did reference, I have on the screen here, this is a 1980 aerial. You can see there was, the structures to the west were already constructed. Area to the north, you can see there's quite a bit of exterior storage, and these areas, images pretty grainy. I would believe that those areas were gravel, but those were what we consider legal non-conforming. They were in place quite some time ago. With this conditional use permit, the board felt that Class 5, although allowed by code, they felt in this particular case that there was a number of concerns that they felt if it were to be paved, that they would feel more comfortable and could support the proposed request. So, again, they did spend a lot of time talking about this. They didn't make light of the request, but in the end, they felt strong enough that they supported that it be paved to help with the dust, oils, emissions, et cetera.
I have another question. Can you put the diagram up with the building and the parking lot and stuff on it? Please?
Sure. Oh, sorry. The site?
Yes.
Yeah.
Okay, the parking right along the building where the handicap spots are, right up in there, do you know if that's gonna be paved?
I believe this entire parking lot is going to be paved, yes. It's just this storage area that's not proposed to be paved.
Oh, well, I have no problem with that.
Counselor Lutz?
I have no problem with Class 5 in the storage area, and as far as the trees go, I think our tree ordinance is absurd. Let the property owner put the trees where they want and the numbers they want. You know, they've got screening back there already. They're going to put fabric on an 8-foot fence. You can't do much more than that.
Counselor Whiting?
No, I have a concern with going against what our Board of Adjustments and Appeals has stated for this conditional use permit. Once we've gone down this road with other buildings coming forward and bringing forward to us, they say, well, you've done it for one, you might have to do it for the next. this whole area has developed since some of those other older aerial shots with the new construction in that area. There is some residential areas not far from there. They may not be able to see it, but it's still a concern with construction vehicles. Anytime you're having vehicles parked on an impervious surface, you know, there's a potential for either losing some oil or hydraulic. I just think that we would make a mistake by going against our Board of Appeals.
Counselor Lehman?
I would just point out that there is more Class 5 storage around this site than what's on this site.
Non-conforming.
Well, a lot of them are fairly new. Spuck is fairly new, their storage area behind it. I just can't imagine, this is quite a distance away from residential on the other side of Fourth Avenue. The runoff issue, it's actually allowed in our own zoning code, and this is a fairly new zoning. We rezoned this to light industrial not very long ago. That's a fairly new zoning, and Class 5 is allowed in that zoning. So if the issue really, if you want to look at the Board of Adjustments and what their concern was, their concern is dust. If that's a legitimate concern to have, put in a condition that they're going to mitigate any dust complaints, and the problem is solved. And if that's not that hard to do.
Counselor Lewis?
The Class 5 is impervious, so anything that gets on it is not going through it. So, you know, what's the difference between Class 5 concrete asphalt? Cost. Nothing's going through it. You know, if you want to have some fun, go try digging a hole in Class 5.
Yep.
It's not fun. As far as the dust, there's a number of ways they can control the dust that are way cheaper than putting concrete or asphalt. I would believe Mr. Lillyhog could speak to that if someone wanted to ask him, but I don't think it's necessary on my part. I'm totally in favor of giving them what they want.
Steve?
Mayor and council members, Mark, if you could switch back to the screen with the aerial on it. Part of the reason that a lot of communities actually shift from an aggregate surface to having a paved surface, if you look at the driveway going out on Kavanaugh Drive, you can even see on the aerial where these aggregate surfaces, they actually track sediment, and you can see that actually on this aerial. And that's one of the larger parts with areas like this, and cities try to fix these over the long run to cure that sediment, because in this case, a lot of these areas, the runoff run right into the Minnesota River untreated. Right. And the Minnesota River is impaired, the turbidity of it is. So it is important that communities look at these situations and fix them in short term, in this instance, as well as long term. So I do recommend the city council give that some merit.
Thank you. Counselor Lehman?
To me, I would rather have dirt going to the river, which is basically what the banks of the river are, than having the oil coming off the asphalt from the asphalt making process going to the river. There's more petroleum distilled in asphalt than there is in gravel, by far. Not to mention, if there is something that's leaking, whatever it might be, any kind of fluids, it's much easier to run off of asphalt or concrete right into the river than it is to be captured on site with gravel.
Other questions of staff? Other questions of staff? Thank you.
Thank you.
Would the applicant or the representative like to come forward and make comment in regard to your appeal? Welcome.
Thank you. Mr. Mayor, council members, my name is Lauren Kirsten with Beacon Construction, and I forgot my snazzy jazz soundtrack, so you'll have to bear with me. Thanks for leaving this up, Mark. Now, if I wanted to change things on here, could you give me a little tutorial quick? I don't think so right now, but this is good. Okay.
You can go back and forth there easy.
Thank you. I represent RTL Construction Larson Development going back to 2001. And when we built our first project in Shakopee, at 4,000 Valley Industrial Road. And then a couple years later, we built another building right across the street at 4001 Valley Industrial Boulevard. And I think you can see, if any of you are familiar with the buildings or have driven by, the caliber of and quality of construction and maintenance of those properties. Mr. Larson does an excellent job of maintaining his properties and takes great pride in them. This is no different, and RTL and Larson Development chose to remain in Shakopee. We had some other sites that we looked at, but wanted to remain in Shakopee. And RTL employs 20 people in this building full-time, and then hundreds of other people in the trades. In fact, they did this building, the drywall and carpentry on this building, so they do great quality work. The two things that we have asked for your consideration, as Mark said, was just the pavement and the landscaping. Let me cover landscaping first. Not only do we feel like we've met the ordinance with the screening, but it is literally impossible to plant trees where we're being asked to plant them. We are on bedrock. So putting trees there is not going to work, for one thing. And we feel like we are also have already covered that with our landscaping plan, and we have done screening from both Fourth and Saracen with our landscape plan that we feel is adequate to this storage area, which, as you've correctly concluded, you really can't see from residential areas anyway. And so we're just a little bit mystified as to where that came from. Second thing is that we're equally mystified on is the Class 5, which is permitted by ordinance. And we agree with Mr. Lehman especially that the runoff from Class 5, and again, we are right on bedrock, so that means we'll have 6 inches of crushed gravel and then bedrock. So there's nothing to run off to. The storage area itself that's going to have lifts and construction vehicles in it, these vehicles, I don't know if you've ever watched a forklift, I mean not a forklift, a scissors lift crawl along. They go maximum 2 miles an hour. So dust, I just can't imagine how there's going to be any concern for dust. If there is, we'll be happy to mitigate. And there are treatment programs available for Class 5 to minimize dust. So that's our basis, and we just appreciate your consideration.
Thank you. Questions of the applicant? Your current location is paved for outdoor storage?
No, the current location is paved for parking. It just happens that there's a few things parked on the parking lot.
And then in some of the commentary in regard to the appeal, you would be moving those vehicles out of that storage on a daily basis. Your construction company, is that correct?
Correct. The way that it happens, though, is that a truck pulls up on the paved surface to the gate. The scissors lift is driven out and onto the truck. At no point is there truck traffic or fast traffic inside that storage area. And then it's back out. There's about 500 lineal feet of pavement between our storage area, our proposed storage area, and the street. So I think the concerns about tracking is minimal compared with, say, Kelly Fuels, which I think was really the streaking that you saw.
Thank you. Councilor Luce?
Well, and my concern would be the weight of the scissor lifts on asphalt. They're going to sink right through it on a good hot day.
Correct,
Your
yeah, with the hard
asphalt's
rubber
not going to
tires.
last 5 years.
True.
So Class 5 is the only way to go with this, or concrete, and concrete cost-wise is just, that's out of the
Prohibitive.
question.
Other questions of the applicant? Other questions of the applicant? Thank you.
Thank you.
Council? Councilor Moko?
I think for me, it's very difficult to go against the Board of Adjustments and Appeals. You know, I'm also kind of concerned about environment and a few of the things that were talked about. However, you know, when you're running a business, it can get very expensive to do payment all throughout the parking lot. And I look at the needs of this business and where the location is, where they're asking. It's not going to be tracked through, through customers in that area or, and like he said, he's gonna be pulling trucks into that and pulling out the scissor lift or whatever that they need equipment-wise. So I just, even getting this, it was kind of looking at it like, you know, having some, you know, they've done their homework, and that's why I just kind of feel like this paving the back area is just, it's not what I was expecting, so.
Other discussion? I struggle too, as well as for our board and adjustment and appeals and planning. I also look at, this has been, I consider this a little bit of an older part of our community. I do believe that this has been zoned light industrial for a while. I ask about the Forest Products Company with the longer buildings there, Kelly Fuels. If those were to be redeveloped in today's age, and they had outdoor storage and it was, you know, the impact to the community, would you ask for asphalt in that regard, or cement or whatever? And I understand cost is. You know, this site used to be kind of, with some shrub on it, and now it's opened up, so the kind of the view is different. But are you continuing the view that outdoor storage could be on Class 5 in the proximity of residential forever? Or are we thinking, you know, new age that it should be asphalt? But that's tough. The question of the landscaping, I know that we could drive around fences that have that opaque fabric on there, or they have the old slats intertwined in there, you know, those last a bunch of years and then they kind of get banged up a little bit. So as this area, and I think we may see this area continue to have redevelopment, we have the site to the east there that went, and now this site. And as we move towards the west, there's obviously residential to the south, and there is just two more businesses over, there is residential, so. Councilor Lehman?
I'll make a motion to approve Beacon Construction's appeal. And I'm gonna highlight that condition as stated by the applicant, that they're acceptable to dust mitigation if the need arises, and I'll let the complaints and city engineer use judgment on that. As for the trees, I don't know about the bedrock, but any trees that they are required to replace currently, if they could put them where they're between them and residential, that would be appreciated.
Second.
Motion on the table and a second, and this would be to approve the appeal, correct?
Correct. With the other little stipulations that they agreed to. Mayor, my concern here is that it's allowed in this zoning.
It's a conditional use permit, so you need the conditional use permit, and therefore you can have conditions of which protect the city.
But you can't have conditions that are invalidating the underlying zoning. Also, the concern raised specifically by the Board of Adjustment and Appeal was dust. They didn't raise issues about anything else. It was strictly dust on the Class 5. Now, all of the alleys in Old Shakopee are all C5. And we've got residents going back and forth all day long. If this is a big concern for everybody, when's the city gonna come up and start blacktopping everybody's alleys, okay? There's more traffic in my alley, or most alleys, than there is by a couple of scissor truck moving at 1 mile an hour on C5. This is just a common sense reality type situation.
Councilor Lewis?
The scissor lifts are all electric, if I'm not mistaken, so there's no engine, no fan. They're not creating dust.
There's nothing to leak.
Virtually nothing.
Hydraulic oil, very limited amount.
I would like to commend them for bringing this project and staying in Shakopee, developing a piece of property that has been sitting there for as long as I've been around. I mean, it looks way better today than it looked before they started. I mean, all it was scrub trees that were overgrown and weeds and everything else, so it's a win-win for us, and for us to accept their recommendation, or however you want to put it, I think is it's a win-win still for us. I mean, they're not going to be detrimental to anybody around them. So,
And we're still addressing the board's concerns with the dust.
Jim?
Mr. Mayor, Ms. Cohen, just so it's clear, the motion is to grant the appeal, and it's to delete conditions 4 and 8 in the Board of Adjustments resolution, and to add a condition that states
Dust
any
mitigation.
dust mitigation measures must be implemented if needed.
Correct. And it was at the discretion of the city engineer. So if the engineer gets a bunch of complaints, you can go over there and tell him, I'm getting some complaints, you need to do some dust mitigation.
So, and 4 and 8 would be removed, and then there would be a mitigation aspect, right?
Yep. And I don't know what to do with the tree issue. I'm not up on the trees.
That was 4. That was in here.
Further discussion? Discussion? All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Those opposed?
Aye.
Aye. Motion passes 3-2. Thank you very much. All right, moving ahead then, 10B2, and for the resolution for the interloan fund, and Michael will present. And I take it this is the council portion of what we voted for in the EDA, correct?
I can,
Oh,
I'll make a motion to approve Resolution R 2018-012 to allow the interfund loan for advance of certain costs in connection with the proposed tax increment financing district for Canterbury.
Second.
I have a motion and a second. Discussion, and I think we had a lot more discussion on it at the EDA. This is exactly the same thing under the preview of the city council, $300,000. Nothing happens if the TIF doesn't get approved, but it's a vehicle that we need in place ahead of time. Councilor Luce?
yeah, I previously voted yes on this, and I will vote yes on this part of the resolution also, only for the reason that we need something in place so that we can control our costs and track them, so that at a future date, if it does go forward,
We get reimbursed.
we have the ability to be reimbursed.
Further discussion? All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Those opposed?
Aye.
Motion passes. Thank you very much. We have the city bill list for our purview here today. 11B, liaison and administration reports. Counselor Lehman?
Let's see here. The school board meeting was canceled due to the weather. And-
Minnesota?
And a snow day?
Yeah.
the school board?
They canceled it because of the snow. And the 169 Corridor Coalition was out in Belle Plaine. The topic was an hour-long tour of a healthcare facility, and that happened to fall on another snow day, which was extremely cold, and I don't know if they canceled or not. I just know that a bunch of us from this side, Prior Lake and myself and stuff, decided it just probably wasn't a safe thing to do. I did talk with Mr. Reynolds about using the city four-wheel drive to get there if need be. He was totally acceptable with that and had me all ready to go, and it just doesn't make sense sometime to put yourself out in the middle of nowhere in that condition.
Okay.
So I opted not to, I opted to bypass a tour of a healthcare facility. However, I just had a really good visit at a healthcare facility prior to that, when I was at the hospital for the damn flu thing that was going around. So I've been there, I didn't feel like I needed to go through another one.
Or catch anything.
Right.
Thank you very much. January 25th, we hosted, I think about 35 Scott County Bold North Super Bowl volunteers The amount of volunteerism here in Scott County and Shakopee is strong. And that group that was part of the Crew 52 for the Super Bowl, our community and the greater community of the metro area got great accolades about the volunteers, and we certainly had a strong contingency from Scott County and Shakopee. Also that night, I attended the STA annual meeting. They elected their new board of directors, so that's good. Last week, on January 29th and 31st, conducted 2 days of interviews with Council Moco for our boards and commissions, and attended the January 30th Envision Shakopee with several council members workshop, and met with staff. So that's my report. Councilor Whiting.
Well, thank you, Mr. Mayor. On the 23rd, the Chamber had their annual meeting. I gave you a little bit of update for some save the dates and some reports from the Chamber and Visitors Bureau. Well attended. The new chair for the Chamber is Michael Morris from out at St. Francis there. Vice Chair is Jamie Riddle from Shutterfly. New members to the board are Jessica Beckman, Lindsay Puffer, Scott O'Brien, Gary Meyer, and Jeff Smolinski. The rest of the board, I think, is the same. Had a great presentation. The presenter talked about how to deal with the different generations, and millennials are not your enemy kind of thing, and they just learning how to work with the different folks with different ideas and
Unless they live with you,
history.
right?
So it was a good presentation. On the 30th, I was also at the comp plan public meeting. That went well. It's great to see some ideas gelling and going to be coming forward here in the future. On the 31st, Minnesota Valley Transit, it was their annual meeting with their new members, Kevin Burkhart from Prior Lake and Bob Coogan from Savage, our new members. The new chair is William Drosty, vice chair Clint Hoopa, and the new secretary is Chris Gerlach. Also coming up is the Suburban Transit Authority, their legislative breakfast on the, February 22nd. I believe that's at the League of Minnesota Cities coming up. So good attendance at caucus last night. Shakopee is an active community for public politics, so great to see that, and that's all I have.
Forgot to hit on that. I forgot to hit on that myself.
You were in that caucus last night.
I was in one, yes.
Councilor Moco?
I also, we did the interviews on January 29th and 31st, as the mayor said, for, with the vice chairs. So we had a little different format, but we got through it and kind of figured out how we wanted to do the interviews. So then, yeah, on Monday, February 5th, I had SPUC meeting, and maybe you know, maybe you don't know, we did have 2 main water breaks. And one was January 31st. I actually think they were both on January 31st. 1142 Quincy, it was a radial break. It was, you know, and I'll talk more about that. And I believe the next one actually will. So for 12 to about 3 o'clock, the water was shut down in that area. And then 7:30 Garden Lane, they also had a radial break. Valves were also leaking. That should have controlled the cutoff once they did the cutoff. And so that was a little longer outage from 9:30 to 6, but they said they really didn't get many complaints from it, which was surprising to me. They did utilize Facebook with those announcements, so everybody was aware. And Mr. Crooks kind of talked a little bit about what might be going on right now, and they were talking about how we had the cold and then the warm-up and then another cold and a warm-up. So their thought is that, you know, the frost is actually going down to the 7-foot level at this point, so it's pretty deep. So they're attributing it to maybe those unusual weather patterns. So, and then Mr. Crooks and 7 staff members will be taking part in the Polar Plunge on February 17th. So, yes, I agree with that, so.
Don't you think the liaison should be involved?
I don't, yeah. Yep, I'm not a swimmer, so. So anyway, and then on the electricity side, they only had 1 outage from the last meeting, and it was on 123 Howard Trail, which was during the snowstorm, and they were actually up and running in 40 minutes even with all the snow. So I thought that was pretty good for them. And they're also starting their bid documents for the LED lights that we're working on for the city, changing everything out to LED. So, and then on the MMPA side, Eagle Creek Elementary and Shakopee received the Hometown Solar Grant as part of MMPA's 2018 Energy Education Program. So
what is that?
I am not positive. That was just one of the announcements that they had done that night. So I was going to look into it a little bit more and find out, but they did receive that grant. So I will get back to you on the information when I get it.
It'll be out
so.
in the media, I'm sure, about what they installed.
Exactly, and it's actually the first school in Shakopee to start this, so it'll be kind of cool to see what they're doing with it.
Counselor Lewis?
Yeah, I'd like to make a comment on the Envision Shakopee gathering that we had. I think it'd be a little more productive if we didn't have 2 council members, a county chair, and a state representative all at the same table. If we broke it up a little bit, we could probably inform the public a little better on some questions. So.
Great. Thank you. Counselor Mokel, are you completed?
I am, thank you.
Great. Thank you very much. Moving forward to the administration report, Mr. Reynolds.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor, members of council. We've had a couple training sessions prior to our last time meeting here as part of this group. On January 31st and the 1st of February, we had pretty in-depth customer service training for frontline staff and management. On the 6th of February, which I believe was yesterday, if I remember correctly, we had respectful workplace training, and essentially we can sum that up in the following pieces of information. 1, all people have value. We should treat them with mutual respect. 2, don't be a jerk, frankly. We have when we have a workplace, you want it to be a place where people are tolerated. And finally, if you see something, say something. We all have a responsibility, whether it's on issues of harassment or frankly anything else that somebody's not comfortable with. We all have a responsibility to report that up the chain. Or if the chain is the issue, find another way to report it. But if you see something, say something. Currently we have the police department is hosting its 2nd annual diaper drive in honor of Jana Wood. You'll all remember Jana was who's died a year ago on the 5th. Jana was a transformative figure in the police department and frankly in a lot of areas of the police in the state as she was called on to bring her area of expertise that she brought into our organization out to others. And both her and her unborn child died last February 5th. The police department is hosting a diaper drive in honor of her, so please, if you have some packages of diapers, drop those off at the police station. I think it's going to go from the 5th to the 12th.
It's already started.
It has already started, correct. Yeah, they've already got mounds of diapers. But you can bring them here, bring them to the police department. We will make sure that they get to the Shakopee Community Assistance Diaper Bank. And then finally, if you'll give me a little leeway, I want to read an email that was sent recently to Police Chief Tate. On January 16th, my 20-month-old daughter choked on a popcorn kernel and was struggling to breathe. I immediately began administering back blows, but her breathing was becoming slower, so we called 911. Officer X and another officer whose name I didn't get were the first responders. When they got here, both officers acted quickly and professionally. It's all a bit of a blur to me at this point, but I remember the piercing, painful feeling of hopelessness in my gut, watching my daughter not breathing, her teeth and little fists clenched and her face beginning to turn blue. After trying everything they could, my daughter still wasn't breathing, and Officer X held her to his chest and continued back blows. She opened her eyes slightly and began wheezing slowly. The EMTs arrived, and when we got in the ambulance, she started crying, and everyone breathed a sigh of relief. The kernel was removed from their lung the next day with no complications. There were no injuries or any neurological damage. She was running around the halls of the hospital laughing with the nurses and was able to leave that same day. My daughter would have died that night without the help of Officer X and his partner. I really can't put into words the appreciation and gratitude that my family and I feel for the officers that saved my daughter's life that night, but know that we consider them both heroes. Officer X even stopped by our house to check on R the next night, his daughter. He was so humble, and I could tell that he truly is serving the community. I will always consider him the reason that tragedy was prevented that night, and once again, my family and I owe both officers our wholehearted gratitude, appreciation, and the fact that I get to continue to be a father to my amazing daughter. I suspect that when she is old enough for me to tell her this story, and I describe the officers' heroic efforts that night, that she will be inspired to be in service to humanity in some capacity as well. Thank you, sincerely, the individual who wrote the letter. Ladies and gentlemen, that sums up why we are in public service. And it's always amazing to be in the position I am and to know the quality and the caliber of the people that work for you. And so I appreciate the opportunity to lead this organization, and I certainly appreciate being a part of something so special as what this individual experienced that night, and recognizing that your employees made a real difference in somebody's life.
Councilor Lewis?
I don't know if the police department has it or not. I hope they do. Is there some sort of award, that service award, that they can acknowledge this person's great work? I know they have the stork pin for officers that deliver babies. I don't know if they have a pin that awards something for someone saving a life, but there should be.
There is Councilor Luce, there is a life-saving award. The reason I did not provide more information in regards to names and things like that is that's currently in review, and hopefully we'll have some more information of that in the future.
Great story. Councilor Whiting?
No, great story. I think we have around 50 officers that are out there every night, ready to do just that. Officer X was there at that time, but I think all of our police are do a great service to this community and would be there when we need them. I also want to mention about the training. With all the things you hear in the news, I think that's great that staff is getting that training, and appreciate you for doing that for them and us.
Councilor Lehman?
Mayor, it's great that this story turned out with a happy ending. But even when they don't end in a happy ending, my personal situation was my stepfather's passing, and which was not recently, it was 2 years ago, roughly. But even then, granted, I beat him to the site because I was only a couple blocks away when the call came in, but those that showed up did an outstanding job minimizing the situation. Very understanding. It was, and I wrote him a letter in the paper saying that. So they do this day in and day out. You know, yes, they have to do the bad side of the job and sometimes arrest people that do things wrong. That's also part of their job. But they do the other side of the job where it's actually saving a life or condoling somebody that's lost one. So hats off to the Shakopee Police Department, you know, and our fire department and all our staff for having that mindset. So that's a good mindset to have, and we need to cherish that as we move forward.
Very well said. Thank you. We will have a motion to adjourn to February 13th. To remind everybody, Mr. Reynolds put out an email January 24th. Kind of a busy workshop on the 13th. We have our city priorities. We're going to go through our goal plan and reviews for the city administrator. Those were due today, so with that.
What did you say about January 24th?
The email, kind of Bill Reynolds put out an email January 24th of a little recap of several things we're gonna do at our workshop.
Right.
All right. Counselor Whiting?
I'll make a motion to adjourn to February 13th, 2018 at 7 PM.
Second.
I have a motion and a second. Further discussion, all in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Those opposed? We are adjourned at 9:05.